All right, so today we're going to continue our discussion about bowls. And so I have a couple bowls here that we're going to look at, and today we're going to trim them. So here we go. So let me get my computer just set up just right. So here we go. So here is one of our bowls. Let me see here. Hold on for a second. So here's one of our bowls, right? So this is that noodle bowl that I was talking about. And then let's just pull out the other bowls that kind of look like that. Remember that we have a few bowls that I categorize kind of in the same kind of category here. So uh, we're going to think about how we trim them and what should be happening during the trimming process. So I've lost my mouse somewhere. Okay, so I got to go up here and do this. So here, let's look at how they look, right? So they have this beautiful form, but then if you notice that when they trim these, they continue that form down through here, right? And it comes out the other side. So same thing with here, right? That ideally, or these bowls, the thickness around the rim and this area is the same as it goes down into here, right? And the thickness is the same as it comes across here. And then the thickness is the same as it comes out the other side. So where did my samples go for that? Here. So what you're going to want to do when you trim these, right? So this is the way it looks now. And then you're going to trim it so it looks like this, right? So you're going to trim off all this mass, a mass in the foot, and of course that other side will be trimmed. And ideally, one of the ways you can trim it is that it has the same thickness all the way around and out the other side. Okay, so that's a very simple rule to follow, right? So if you look at these, and then if your bowl has a curve, right? So these bowls all have a curve on the inside because it's coming down, coming down, coming down, and it really starts to change direction and come back out. That should be, or it's good a lot of times to have that curve reflected in the bottom. So right here is up, and then down here is down a little bit. So hopefully that's what I did here, right? So you see how the curve continues through there. So, and then you end up with a bowl that when you pick it up, the weight feels good when you pick it up. And it just feels nice and good, and it feels good to use and handle and everything. It's kind of at rest and at peace with itself. So then when we look at the shape of the foot, if you look at just this one, you see how the shape of the foot comes in, and then it's not a straight foot. This one, the foot comes angling out. So that's really good a lot of times if you want to hold it. I know we talked about this but if you want to hold it, you can run your finger along the edge of that foot like that if you want to. It's fun to cup. It just offers also like a counter angle design wise as the bowl comes in, coming in, and then that has just this counter angle coming out. So it's a little bit different. So you can see this is my bowl that I made for noodles, and then I trimmed that same kind of thing on there, right? I have that angle, and so we'll trim that foot onto one of these bowls. Let's see what Justin did. So Justin just has this beautiful transition. Look at how nice that is. The way he kind of rolls this pot down, and then he just kind of does a gentle and beautiful curve right into the foot. Which one is better? Neither one, right? It's up to you as the artist to think about how you want to finish these. Now, this is wood fired. Justin's bowls are wood fired. The wood firing is much more torturous to the pieces. And so the clay has a higher chance of failure and warping. So his bottom, that's why maybe, I don't want to really think for him, but his bottom is a lot thicker here as it comes across. That's probably because the way he needs to wad it, the way it needs to be fired, that thickness right here, it's a little bit thicker here, just adds a lot of strength to the overall form and keeps it from warping. And you can see there's wad marks on the inside. So the way this bowl was fired, there was another bowl inside of the similar style, and those bowls were all kind of stacked up on top of each other, upside down like that. And that's just a technique for firing something, right? Where you will tumble stack things together and put them in the kiln together. And so extra thickness, he has a little bit of extra thickness here because you see how this turns up, this part turns away here and starts going down, where that's not happening on the inside, right? The inside, it's sloping and coming back around. But you see how here it's coming back up, and then here it's just a flat bottom. That thickness, I don't know if that's exactly what it's doing, but I'm just going to guess. That thickness adds a lot of strength to this area because there's going to be a bowl sitting on top of this. There's going to be a bowl, there's a bowl in here, right? And they all need to support each other. And this foot, right, it needs to be high like this so that there's clearance so the next bowl can sit on top. If he has a very short, shallow foot, then the next bowl might hit here along the side of the bowl. So he's making choices based upon how he needs to finish them and the process that needs to happen, right? So, and then where this was just fired regular, and this fire is these firings are much shorter, right? And so you can make different choices aesthetically as you're going. So we'll make one of these feet today. Put this away. So let's just start with that, okay? So here we go. Let's set up the trimming. So I have this bowl here, oops, that I made. So this is getting leather hard here, and we'll put it on the wheel. So here we go. I'm just gonna, so I took off that pad and recycled it. So, cause I don't like trimming on bats. I love trimming on the wheel head. We're just gonna put it down. All right, so let's talk today about tap centering. Tap centering can be a little bit difficult to figure out, but we're gonna do our best to show you, okay? So when something is off like that, I can just do manual centering, right? I'll use the wheel head to kind of eyeball it, right? To kind of make sure that, because it has the ring, so I just kind of eyeball it to see if it's in the middle and centered, right? But it usually isn't, no matter how good you try to do it. So you see how it's wobbling? So the wheel's spinning counterclockwise, and I use my left hand for this, right? And you could use your right hand and do it this way. So let's just pretend it's way off center like that, okay? So it's way off center. I'm going to point this one down too so you guys can see it from all three sides. So it's way off center, and I need to get it into the middle. Tap centering is the super most efficient way to get it into the middle. Okay, and it's pretty fast, but it's kind of an instinctual process. You can't really think about it, right? It's like tapping to music. So, you know, when you're listening to a good tune and your foot's like tapping to the beat, right? You don't think about it. You can't think, oh, I got to tap now. I got to tap now. I got to tap now, right? If you think like that, you'll be too late. You'll miss the beat, right? You need to just have the beat kind of going. So it's a little bit like that when you tap center. So here, and I'll explain why, don't worry. So here it's off center, right? So if it's this off center, I normally would just push it. I can see which way it needs to go, so I'd push it like that. And then I'm using this ring right here to kind of see if it's close. So getting it that close is relatively easy. But now it's that last little bit, right, to get it dead on center. Because you know, well, I know I did an awesome job, right? That it is super centered. I mean, it was super round when I did it. So when I get it centered, it should be super round too. So let's just knock it a little bit off center more so that it's easier to see. When you tap center, what you're going to do is take your hand and hit it like this, tap it like that as it goes around. So right now, I'll use the needle tool. Right now, this pot is too far that way. You see that? It's too far going that way. So when that arrow, I don't put the arrow on normally, right? I'm just doing that as a visual aid. So you see how it's too far that way. So what it needs to do is it needs to go that way. Right? So it's too far this way, and I need to push it that way. But we could do that through tapping, because what I'll do is I'll bring my hand in and hit it right there, and as it goes by, my hand will travel with it like that. You see that? Now, since the pot stays spinning when I do this, what I don't want to do is just stab my hand in straight away. That doesn't work. Right? My hand needs to hit it and travel with it like that at the same speed. So boom, like that. So right now I'm not hitting it hard enough so you see how I keep hitting it at that point, right? Okay, so let's do it for real. So here, so then what I need to do is just like hit it hard enough so the wheel, so it slides more into the middle. So after I do the first tap, this arrow won't be right anymore. So here we go. So maybe one more, because you see how it's just still a little bit off. So I'm going to erase this arrow because it's distracting. So here, and then, so I just got to watch it and just see where it goes. See, so sometimes when you're tap centering the next tap, it doesn't get better, it gets worse, right? So sometimes the next tap gets worse. So maybe I need to push it farther off, and then I'll tap it again. There. So that's pretty close. I'm pretty close. Maybe it's just a little bit off still. So you see, it doesn't matter that I don't get it. And if I don't get it, I might hit it and it's getting really close, but it's too close for me to tell when I need to tap. I will push it farther off like that and then go again. So you see how that's tap centered. So now I'm ready to put my clay down. Right? So there's a couple really good benefits to learning how to tap center. What are they? So the benefits are that it's super fast, right? So it's not a stressful experience. It's kind of makes centering your pots to trim really kind of more enjoyable, because just taking that and shoving it around like this is really no fun, right? Because it can be frustrating and things. Where tap centering, it goes very quickly. Right? See that? Also, it lowers the cost, meaning the time cost, for you to get something centered. So if you realize that you maybe need to trim it more, like you pull it off the wheel and you maybe need to trim it a little more, you can put it back down super easy and just tap center it. The cost for you doing that has gone down, the opportunity cost in economics, right, they call it. So you're more likely to put your bowl back down and try it, right, to try to fix something. Also, I realize now I have it centered. I realize now I never really looked at the inside to try to figure out where I need to trim, right? So maybe I can still, since I didn't take a million hours to try to center this, I am very willing to pull it off and take a look at the pot. So let's do that. Let's pull it off, take a look at the pot, because remember, I need to trim it. I want to trim it so the inside and outside are parallel to each other, right? But I haven't looked inside to see if there are spots maybe where I need to trim more or whatever. So I'm just going to pull it off for a second and let's check it out. So here, look at the outside. Look at the inside. And what I would normally do, right, is I'll feel down and feel like, is there a thick spot? Are there thin spots? About where do I really need to start trimming? So I feel. It's pretty parallel here. There is a little bit of a hump thick spot like right here at this level. So I might trim just a little bit off there, and that will change this curve, right? I don't know if you guys can see it. There is a little to slight hump there, right? And then, so I'll trim just a little bit off that surface. Maybe I'll just mark that surface with my finger. So I put a little mark there so I can see it so I don't forget. Also now, but right here, this curve is feeling pretty good and the thickness feels pretty good. But right in here, right, that's where I need to start trimming. So I don't normally mark it, but just for you guys, I'm gonna mark it so I know about where I'm gonna trim that baby. Start really laying into the clay and really moving material. So from there up, I'm gonna trim more material, right, to cut into that foot. Okay, and now that seems like, so now I have a plan. The other thing you could do is you can check how thick it is, right? So this isn't something I normally do. So why not? Because I already know how thick it is. I remember how thick it was kind of when I made it, right? Because I was maybe using my pinky rule for thickness when I was opening, or maybe I was using my thumb rule because maybe I wanted a thicker bottom. So maybe I left that much clay. But for this one, I think I left a pinky. But let's just check how thick it is. So I can lay something flat over the top, right? And I could use anything for this. Here, I'm just going to use this throwing stick, and I'm going to measure down to the top of the stick, pull it out. Oh, sorry. I need to measure down to the inside of the bowl, right? From the top of the stick, because that's easier. And then I'll just measure down to the outside of the bowl. And then you'll see that's how much thickness I have to trim. So if I trim that full distance, I'll end up with a hole in the middle of my pot, really, right, I want to leave some thickness though, so that the base of this foot has some thickness, right? So I just can't trim all that away. I need some thickness here, right, to be there. And then remember, it needs to be round. So that thickness there is the thinnest, is the where it's the thinnest in the middle of the pot, right? Because this pot is, that's right there, but this pot gets, the base gets thicker, 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 thicker as I come out. So I can trim more. That's the part I'm going to trim through first. And then here I can, it's thicker all the way up. So I'm also feeling that curve just to see how fast it's sloping, right? And because I want to replicate that curve on the inside. So because I know how to tap center now, I can, it's really easy for me to put it back on. So how do we practice tap centering? Well, because it's a little bit of a practice-y thing and it's a little bit hard to get, you could tap center with just about anything. And that's what I recommend that you do. Try tap centering with different things. So this is a jar, right? And it's square. It's a square jar, right? So I'm going to try to tap center though with the lid. So this is a plastic jar. This is perfect to try to tap center with. Right? So if you're sitting there one day and you're bored, you don't want to make something. So I'm trying to center it to the top of this jar, right? So there we go. There we go. So I'm trying to center it to the top of this jar. It's almost there. So take different objects, right, and try to tap center to them. So that's feeling pretty good. So my computer just crashed. Give me a second. So, okay, so my recording, so everything kind of went wacky with my internet. So sorry, there's a little bit of a break there. All right, so here we go. So practice tap centering with just objects that don't break. So here, let's just practice tap centering with this jar. Same principle. I need to move with the jar as I'm tapping. And so if you're, I'm doing it lefty, but you could also do it righty. You could do it like this, right? So here, tap, 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 tap. You guys see that? Tap. So here I do it lefty. So do it this way. It's hard to get right at first. So here, so I'm tapping this, and this is a harder object because it's square. So I need to tap center it to the lid, which is round. Right, and this is my jar of glaze. Oh, that's it. Look at that baby. Right on the money. Okay, so we'll bring this down so you can see it. Looking really groovy, looking really good. Tap, tap, tap. So let's get another different kind of object that we can tap center that's not breakable. Let's just see if we can do it with a roll of masking tape. This is the thicker kind of tape. If your object is too light, it's really hard to tap center. So it has to have a little bit of weight and have a little bit of friction to it. I think this tape, I can do this tape. It's a little bit light, but here we go. So here, since it's so light, I'm just using my fingertips for this, right? I'm just using my fingertip to tap. So it's almost there. You see how it's almost there? Then if I'm not getting it, I'll tap it farther off center and then just try again. Right? So see how that suddenly it just kind of pops into place. I'll tap more, it's way off center. Go back to this and I just keep tapping, and then so that's pretty good. I would put clay down. Let's undo it and let's do it again. So you want to just keep practicing this. Try practicing every day or every time you trim, just practice tap centering a few things because it really helps out. It's such a pleasure to do. All right, so now let's get my bowl back and let's tap center it on and trim, because I kind of mapped out exactly what I want to do. Ooh, that worked out really good. The other thing that I do is I have this clay. This is where I keep my trimming clay, the clay I use to hold this down, because I like my clay that I'm going to blob down here to be a little bit harder. So I take the clay that's a little bit harder from whatever I was doing, and I kind of ball it up and I put it into this guy here. And then this clay is a little bit stiff, and I can use that for holding this down. And then I just put it back in here, and then when it starts getting a little too dry, I just spray a little bit of water. You can see there's a little bit of water in there, and that helps keep it wet enough. And then when this clay gets too hard, when it gets really hard, I just recycle it. There we go. Hold the pot down. Push this down. this pot down, push it down. So I use 3. I always use 3. All right, so let's introduce a new tool that, I mean, seen this tool before, but we're going to use the Sureform. You get these from any big hardware store. Normally has this type with a handle. You can get this at Harbor Freight. You could also get these at True Value Hardware. So here, or something, Ace Hardware, True Value. So usually the big hardware stores have them, usually, but sometimes they don't. Where do you find these? You find these by the chisels. That's always what I say. Because if you go and ask them for this thing, which is a Sureform, a lot of people don't know where they are. But if you ask where the chisels are, this is usually right by the chisels. These Stanley Sureforms. And these are great. Because they trim pretty fast and they help me get it round pretty quick. They do a great job. So I'm just rounding this off. Knocking off some clay, and it just allows me to get down to the level that I want a little bit faster. So these things, I've already trimmed this pretty narrow already. So just for, I'm gonna put down where I want my foot. So I want this foot maybe right about there. So I can't trim too, actually maybe I want the foot right about where it is. So I can't use this for very long because I undercut this one so much. So that's where I want my foot. I'm going to start trimming this down. So I love these tools for doing that. So we've already talked about these tools. But these tools are absolutely great. Dolan tools. It's absolutely awesome. So let's take a look at this. So I can use this corner here, right, to trim that. Right there. So I can use that corner here and trim down right into here. It's a beautiful tool because this edge is sharp, and then this edge is sharp, and then this edge is sharp. See if we can get a good look at it. You see that? It's a beautiful, beautiful tool. So I can trim using that edge and that edge. And so that's what I'm going to do. Start, and I hold like that, and I'm just going to trim. So this is just removing clay. So these tools are a better quality of steel than the steel that you normally use for your throwing thing. And you can see that I'm already starting to undercut this, right, to get that counter angle here. So I'm already trimming down that way. So I have the outside, a counter angle for the outside of this foot. Like, I got to get the bullet out, sorry. So for like this, right, I've already started to undercut it, just like right there. So this pot's maybe just a little bit dry to be trimming, right? So this pot dried out a little bit too much since last class, but this tool is pretty sharp. So since it's since it's pretty sharp, or it's sharper than my other tool, my regular trimming tool that you get in the trimming tool kit, the old ones, the steel ones, those ones get dull much faster. So when I sharpen this one, it stays sharper for longer, and then it can trim this type of pot that's a little bit stiffer. Right, so there we go. Trimming. There, so getting close. So actually probably not getting that close because it's a little bit steeper. So you see how this pot here, I actually have a lot of ways to go. So what I want to, so there's still this part right here. I'm going to have to trim this off. So I'm going to do that now because that's going to change the curve. So it's about the right thickness there. It's about the right thickness there. I need to trim a bunch off there, but this part is a little bit too thick. So I'm going to trim that off now because that will change what I do down here. I'll explain here in a second. So I'm actually putting pressure on top of this because it was vibrating, and that can cause chattering on the outside. There we go. There we go. So I think that's enough of trimming for that area. There, I put a little bit of a line there. We'll clean that up afterwards. So now I can come around, and so this curve now has been established. Here, there's a curve coming up here, and I want to make sure that I follow that curve. So there's a beautiful curve that comes through. So starting right about here is starting to get too thick. So I need to trim into here, but there's a lot I have to trim here. Because I just know that that's the type of pottery that I make. And so I've already establish that curve down over here. So I want to continue this line all the way around. So just like here, right? We want to continue that line all the way around so it has a continuous curve coming in to the pot, or coming into the foot, I mean. So, and then be brave when you trim, right? So if you feel like maybe, right, trim it so that you're getting what you want, right? Thickness wise, weight wise, right? Because it's only clay and you can recycle all this. And it's better to make good pots, of course, than to make bad pots. Also, right, once you fire these pots, they live for forever, right? So it's, you know, there's, just go for it. Make the best pot that you can. You're going to trim through some, you're going to mess some up. That's just part of the process of learning. So you can see now that foot is getting beautiful. Look at how deep that foot is. I think I love that foot, how deep it is. And now you can see that I'm starting to get close. The curve, 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 curve. And then it's just a little bit of a bump there. So I'm going to start trimming that bump off. It gets to a point where using this tool gets a little bit hard because maybe there's corners here. So that corner hits or that corner hits. So let me switch now to a different tool. So I'm just going to switch back to one of these. And this is won't leave as many marks. I can be a little bit more casual with this about those edges. Won't leave any edge marks. So I'm just doing that here. I'll switch back to the other tool in a minute. There we go. Look at that. So this one's pretty sharp. So it's doing a pretty good job. So I'm going to trim this. There's a little bit of a bump here that I'm going to trim off. As it transitions into this area, I'm going to trim that right here a little. I'm pressing down on this to keep it from vibrating. You can see that this clay here is a little bit drier, so it's almost there. A little bit of a hump here. We'll trim a little bit more off here just to get that all down to one level. So I'll recycle all this trimming scraps, right? I'll put all these trimming scraps in my bucket. There we go. So you see how that was it right there. So you see how it's when it's all looking good. So this curve is looking good. Maybe I need to trim out just a little bit more right there. So that's what we'll do. And that's where this corner here comes in, is really good because I can just stick that into that corner and trim. Where this guy, since it kind of has rounded edges here, I can't really, it's really hard for me to get into that corner and create a nice sharp angle there, which I really like. And then you see how the outside of this foot right here, the vertical part, I'm going to use this part here to clean that up. I'll push that against there like this. See, that's I'm doing two things at once. I'm trimming this part down, going down, and I'm trimming this part, cleaning up the outside of the foot at the same time. There we go. There, look how beautiful that transition is. So I'm really into how clay changes, what we do with the form comes in and then makes a sharp turn. I'm going to go vertical. I'm going to use this vertical side now to trim this. Flip it and use the vertical side. Just because I can hold it a little bit more stable. There we go. So I might not be done with this part, but I'm done with it for now. And now I'm going to trim the inside of the foot. Get this. Boy, there we go. So now this tool doesn't fit in there very well, so I need to use, well, I could use this. So I can use this like a smaller loop tool by holding it this way and just using that curve right there. Oh, so here I'm going to leave this foot behind like that, right? So that'll be the amount of foot. But I also like, since this outside part is angled in, I'm going to angle this part and so it's parallel, the inside of this. There we go. So this foot is a little bit wobbly, so I'm just going to go all the way across and just try to even it out. Especially right here, I'm trying to even that part out because I don't want my pot to sit lopsided. And that could have happened with any number of things along the way. Maybe I didn't trim my rim off straight. Maybe I bumped it right after I transferred it, so the clay slumped down more on one side or something. Any number of things could have happened there. Let's pull these down so you guys can see better what's going on. There we go. So you can see the way I hold it, I brace it like this when I use these tools. And I started really using these tools for everything when I was in undergrad because they had tons of these tools lying around. And then, you know, the smaller loop tools, right, wear out faster. They get dull faster, and you can't really sharpen them because there's not enough metal there. So what I used to do is just resharpen the ones of these that I liked, and then I could use it a lot like one of these tools, right? By just flipping it around and just trimming with this side here, this side. So I could trim with this round side here by doing that, and nobody was using these sides, right? Because everyone was just using the flat part. Flat part becomes dull. This part stays sharp. So I was just flipping them around and using them like that. So I kind of got into that habit of using the edges when I trim. Now I actually kind of like it. So there. So also what I'm establishing already is this part is going to be high, and I'm trimming more off of this because I want this curve to come in here and match up with this curve here and then go back down and then match up with the other side. So I'm not going to trim too much more from this very, very middle, but I'm going to trim a lot more from this side. So that's where this tool, the fatness of this tool doesn't really work anymore. So then I can switch back to my Dolan tool, which I set down somewhere. So now I can switch back to this because it has a curve now. So now when I'm trimming this curve, I'll turn it this way. Well, this side won't trim the opposite side clay facing anymore. So now I can switch back to this. There we go. And I could just use this. And I'm using now this corner right here to trim that inside face right there. And you just see how beautiful how that changed. It went from kind of rough looking to a much beautiful, cleaner surface. And then I could use this vertical surface right here, right, to trim this vertical surface here. So now I'm really just trying to match up. There we go. Look at that. Woo! So now I'm trying to match up this curve, drop it down. So right now, this curve right here just looks too high. I'm getting close to what I want here, but I'm going to trim a little bit more down there. So it's all guesstimation, right? Right now about how thick I think it was, how to remember, and I'm just have to think back and remember when we measured. So it's still too thick. There's too much difference between this guy and this guy. We'll lower this down so maybe you guys could see it. So it's just too much height difference. This is too high right here. So here we go. All right, but it's getting close now. So if it's getting close, that means my clay is probably getting kind of thin. So I have to kind of start watching out. I need to start getting worried about what I'm doing here. So I got to take it easy. If you think you're getting thin and your clay is a little bit wet, like leather hard, sometimes you can push on it and you can feel the clay like bouncing up and down, right? So, but I don't feel that yet, so I think I'm okay. So here we'll just keep trimming. There we go. Trim. All right, so now I'm also going to look at the angles of the foot. So I'm going to look at this angle here and compare it to this angle on the inside, see if they match up. I don't know, are they matching up? Nope, I think this angle, well, it's close. Maybe I'll just leave it like that. Also, this foot, I think for me, is just a little bit thick. So I'm going to probably trim more of this outward a little bit because I don't want to trim any more inward. It's already looking a little narrow, like as far as overall width, but I think it's just a little bit too beefy in thickness. So I'm going to trim this side back a little bit. Once again, I'm using that vertical surface of the tool. There we go. This square trimming one is, I think, I love this square one. I also have a few other ones I love, and then this shape is pretty good too. So let's look at the two shapes. So this one just is more tapering. They sell that one. This one's really good though. If there's only one of these I was gonna have, I would use this one all the time. There we go. Whoa, that's it. That's almost there. So it's almost there. If anything, it's just the very outside of this needs to be trimmed down some more. There we go. close. I'm going to trim it just one more time, maybe. We're getting so close. Good. So now I'm going to round this foot off. So the one thing I could do here is that foot is pretty tall for me. So maybe if I wanted to, I could trim it down some, right? Take away some height. But I'm okay with it like that. I'm just going to leave it just like the way it is. And then as far as height goes, and I'm just going to clean up the inside of this a little bit. So now I'm not really trying to remove clay. I'm just trying to get it smooth and beautiful in there. I'm going to round the top of this foot here. So I'm going to make it round. There's a little bit of a weird thing, but it feels okay. Let's trim a little bit more off here because it's a little bit of a divot on one side. Now I'm going to trim the inside part of that. So I think of my feet like rims. I want my rim nice and round and beautiful. Or my foot nice and round and beautiful. So there we go. So that's it for this guy. So I might take a rib and run it around the top of this for a second, because to help compact and make that area smooth. Oh, and there's one other place I gotta fix. So here, I'm just gonna do this for a second, just to kind of get that rounded off and smooth and compacted. So now when I'm glazing this, even when I'm throwing these, I'm thinking about how am I gonna glaze this. So here, when I glaze this, you see how there's a line here where this part where I just trimmed and rounded, there's a line right there. I'm going to glaze down to that line. This face right here is where I'm going to wax to, or not have any glaze. And if you look inside, that's the same thing. If you look inside here, I will glaze this part and stop there, right there. And then this bottom face. So when you look at it, let's just look at it from the side and place something flat on top. You can see that even though that foot is rounded, that is enough vertical space from that line there and up for me to leave unglazed, and it looks really good. So I like that rounded. I've already trimmed my pot to fit the way how I like to glaze. If I round this completely off, make it spherical, right, coming around, and there's no line, then I don't really have a guide when I'm glazing about where to stop. So I like to put a line there, right? My other choice is I could just stop glazing right there if I wanted to, and that would look pretty good too, and just leave the foot bare. A lot of people would do that too, and actually that gives you more leeway as far as running and dripping and stuff. But I like to bring it a little bit closer and there, and that just makes it so much easier when I'm trying to glaze something that I don't really have to think about it. It's easy to put wax on to that line and everything. It just makes life go much easier. So the one trick that we're going to show you with this, so we could be done. Oh no, we're going to fix this part down here in a second, but let me show you one other thing with the foot. You could do all sorts of stuff still with a foot, right? So what we're going to do is we're just going to cut out a notch out of this, and this is just for fun. So what I'm going to do here is take my knife and I'm going to cut down to this line right here. So I'm just going to cut a little V out like this, just for kicks, right? You don't have to do this. Going down, 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 down. And so you see, I want to get to where the blade gets to the bottom of this area here, right there. Can't really see it. It's not really focusing. You guys will see it here in a second. Go down, down, down. So I'm wiggling it back and forth, and I want the blade to be touching on the outside and touching on the inside part of the foot, on the body of the pot. And I'm going down at kind of an angle. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to cut a counter angle from right here and try to hopefully that they meet in the middle. I'm just guessing. Usually it works out. Just got to, hopefully it works out. So it's still leather hard. And so now I'm down, right? So you can see that I've cut it down on both sides. You see that? Right there. I've cut it down on both sides, and then I'm just going to pop that little section out. So why did I do this? Just to show you that something like that is possible, right? What does that do? Well, I don't know really what that does. It does a few things. It looks kind of cool, right? It's something different. When you put your pots in the dishwasher, right? If you ever notice, if you load your pots in upside down, the feet are always filled with water when you pull them out, right? And this is like a little drain. So I want to make sure that that little guy, that little V bottoms out at the bottom of this. So this is rounded, right? And so the water will come to the outside of this, and then it'll slip out that little V. So the inside of the foot then will be dry. I would want to round this with some sponginess. I can also do another one. Let's show you a different kind where I use this sure form and I'll grate this away. So pretend that was done, right? But we're going to do another one where we're going to end up erasing that. Is I'm just going to sure form this away. So this is this round foot long sure form, right? This definitely they do not sell at Lowe's or Home Depot. You have to go usually to a smaller hardware store like Ace Hardware or I can't remember them. True Value sometimes has them. And I'm just going to grate this away, and I'm going to use that curve to create this thing. This is going to be a wide open. This is going to be a pretty wide opening. We're going to try it, though, just as an experiment. Let's just see how it looks. So I'm just going to grade this away. And I could stop anytime. So maybe I would want to stop there, but that looks kind of goofy. We're just going to grade this all the way down and just see how it looks. I think I'm going to end up taking too much away. So I'm just going to stop there. Normally I would go all the way down, but I think for how much foot there is here, I'll end up grading too much away. So what I want to do now is just make sure it's even Steven on both sides. It's a little bit more graded away on that side since I already have that V there. But what I was going to try to do is grate all the way down so I had a big U shape. But I think if I grate that much of my bowl foot away, this bowl wouldn't stand up very, it'd be kind of kippy. So then what we're going to do is we're just going to sponge that area off a little bit. I don't know what happened to my sponge. Oh, there it is. Just to kind of create a feeling of happiness. I'm blowing at the area to get all those chunks out before I sponge this, because if you look, this area looks really sharp right now. It's really aggressive, and that it's not really focusing, sorry. That area is really sharp and right angly, right? So I'm going to just clean that area up just by sponging it to soften those edges a little bit. It doesn't have to be really soft, it just needs to be softer. And the other thing this does, so it's for the dishwasher, makes it good for the dishwasher. Also, what it does is when you set a bowl down and it has a wet foot, and then you know that if it didn't put that in there, it would have a wet ring, and sometimes that makes the bowl sticks to whatever it is a little bit. So this doesn't, so when you lift the bowl up off the thing, it doesn't have a vacuum. So the last thing I'll do is mark it with my chop. Oh, I forgot. There's a little bit of an area down here that we still got to fix. Right down here. Right here. There's a little bit of a line that I trimmed into there, so I need to take care of that. So I couldn't do that earlier because there was the clay was in the way, the clay that I was holding down, so I'm just going to trim that off. Very lightly, just trimming that away. Sorry for the sound. There, that looks good. All right, so now I'm going to put my chop on. Man, I just had my chop like a second ago. I grabbed it. Did it fall on the floor? Oh, there it is. So now I'm going to put my chop on, so that's my stamp. Let's see here. So I can stamp it in the middle. I could stamp it on the side. Ooh, let's just stamp it right here so it lines up with this. So when I stamp it, what I'm going to do is stamp it there, but I'm going to support it on the inside with my finger opposite. So when I push down, I don't crack the clay. So when I push down from this side, I'm going to push back from the inside. So I try to make sure my fingers are opposite each other, and then I'm going to push this guy in. I like that. Oh, I could line it up here too. Let's do that. Let's line it up on the inside of that mark, just for kicks. Rolling it back and forth so I can feel the pressure coming back against me. There we go. So that is a trimmed pot there. There. So that one's done. Woohoo! So that one's pretty good. All right. So that was, I trimmed one. I'm going to let you guys imagine. We won't take the time to trim this one today during class. But when I trim this one, I'll just talk you guys through it, right? This one is a flat bottom. right? So let's just look at the flat bottom bowls, right? So the theory behind that is I would trim this bottom flat all the way across. And where do I put the foot on this? I like, for these type of bowls, I like to have the foot, if this is wide enough, of course, if where this transition, this curve stops and starts being flat, right? And that creates a bowl where the inside and outside match up pretty good. This is straight, this is round, and that round just starts going flat, like right there. And that's where I put the foot on the outside. So that matches up with where it starts going flat on the inside. You see that? So right there. So this is curve, 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 curve. Right there, it starts the flat bottom. So that's where I put the outside of the foot. Right, so that there's all sorts of reasons why you would want to break that rule, but let's say this one, right, is kind of flat bottom-ish, but it's definitely has a roundish bottom, but it's kind of has a round bottom that's a wider curve and then has a much tighter curve and goes straighter. So this guy, since this is round, 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 foot is smaller, right, following kind of a similar rule as this. But if you look at a wide bowl like this, right? So this one comes across flat, 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 flat. So right about here, you can see it in the reflection, right? That's where the curve, it starts curving right there. And that's where I want to put my foot, exactly opposite. So when I'm looking at these, when I'm getting ready to trim this sort of pot with a wide, flat bottom, I feel where the bottom stops going flat. So right about here, it's kind of it's kind of ambiguous, right? So this one is kind of flat here, but it starts curling up a little bit there, a little bit. So I think right about there is where I'm going to put the foot, exactly opposite my finger. I'll put my finger opposite on the opposite side, like that. So I know that, oh no, it's right there. And then I'll take my nail on the outside and mark it like that. So that's about where I would want to put the foot. So let's just quickly mark it on the wheel. So since I can quickly center it, right, I could do that. And then I'll mark a line on that line right there. So that's where I'm going to put that in that neighborhood. Sometimes it ends up a little bit wider or a little bit narrower, but that just gives me a visual reference, right, about where I'm thinking. And then I just do the same thing. I want to feel. Oh, it starts. So this one is pretty even, right, all the way around, and it starts getting thicker right there. So that's where I'll start trimming right there. So I'll mark that. This also has a design here on the outside, so I can't, or I don't want to even get close to trimming this area. So I really don't, when I make these bowls, I already know that I'm not going to trim any of this because I don't want any trimming lines getting close because I can mess up my beautiful design that I really worked hard on. So I don't trim that. I just trim from the bottom here when I do that. So I really don't trim any of this part because I don't want the mistake in getting in there and trimming that. And then this will have a same kind of foot just like this one does. So once again, we'll look at this one, right? And then this one, I put the chop in the middle, which seems to work for this, right? And then that's the way it'll look in the end, right? And these make great serving bowls, things like that, depending on how big you make them. All right. Any questions? Oh, next class, we're going to start plates. We're going to do some plates. And I'll show you guys how to, and next class, what we'll do is I'm going to go to the hardware store and just collect different things that are cheap that I think you guys could use for bats. So you guys don't have to pay like $20 for one bat. That I'm going to go and get some large tiles. That's what I'm going to try to do. Get some tiles from Home Depot or Lowe's or hardware store and then just attach them to the wheel so we can make plates with them. All right. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah. So that's going to be lots of fun. So I think that's what we'll use. Well, I think that's what we're going to, I'm going to walk around the aisle. So my idea is that we could buy glazed flooring tile, and just throw with them. I had some that I threw with before, but I think I used them for something because I don't have them around anymore. So I think I had some 6-inch tile, and then maybe I'll try to see if the 12-inch tile will even fit in here. The thing that worries me about using the tile is, man, that tile is really tough, right? So you could really hurt yourself with that. So I'm going to try getting some today and try throwing on it today and just see if it even works as a cheap alternative, right? For you guys. All right, so let me see if I can find my mouse here.